I'm the leader of the council. So for the public record, we have cabinet members present in the room tonight, as well as a number of senior officers. Some non-cabinet members are also present, and additional officers are also joining the meeting virtually online. If any virtual attendees wish to speak, they should indicate with the yellow hand icon, and we'll put this up in the meeting. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded by the council for subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site. So can I please ask cabinet members to introduce themselves and state their portfolio, and a reminder that when any other speakers do speak, if they can introduce themselves when speaking.
Sarah Williams, Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning and Deputy Leader.
I'm Emily Arkell, I'm the Cabinet Lead for Culture and Leisure.
Asda Over, Cabinet Lead for Communities.
Councillor Seema Chandwani, Cabinet Member for Resident Services and Tackling Inequality.
Councillor Ruth Gordon, Cabinet Lead for Placemaking in the Local Economy.
Micah Cutter, Climate Action, Environment and Transport.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have any apologies for absence tonight?
We do, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Das Neves, Brabazon and Cowan.
Thank you. Item 3, urgent business. There are no new items of urgent business. Item 4, declarations of interest. Can cabinet members please indicate if they have any declarations to make tonight? No. Item 5, notice of intention to conduct business in private, any representations received and the response to any such representation. So there were no representations received at the agenda publication stage in relation to the exec items on the agenda. Item 6, minutes. Can we confirm and agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of February 2025 as a correct record? Great. Item 7, deputations, petitions and questions. There were none received. Item 8, matters referred to Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There are none tonight. Item 9, which is the finance update, quarter 3. I'm going to introduce this report. My colleague, Councillor Carlin, is away at the moment, so I'm going to introduce the report tonight. So like councils across London, across the country, Haringey is facing a serious rises in the cost and need for social care and temporary accommodation. The cost of temporary accommodation in London went up by 68% last year alone. Adult social care went up 10% in Haringey. Quarter 3 report here sets out how the cost and need for local public services is changing over time. Adult social care is now projected to be almost £1 million higher than in quarter 2, with a rise in the number of people requiring support packages and the number of adults aged 50 to 64 requiring physical disability or mental health support. The day-to-day cost of our local public services in Haringey is now set to be £37.2 million higher than projected last year. We have found around £20 million in efficiency savings and have put in extraordinary measures to immediately reduce the expenditure. These measures are not ideal, but necessarily necessary to deal with the wider forces hitting local councils like ours. The housing revenue account is affected by the rising cost of repairs, the high number of voids and the number of properties that require renovation work to address with damp and mould. And as you all know, we saw more funding from the new government this year as they start to move away from the previous government's funding rules. We're pressing this government to do more and to move faster though, and we need fair funding reform urgently. The devastation left by austerity has been felt across local and national public services, and we have to try to rebuild. We're doing everything we can to cut costs and raise revenue locally, but it will take national reform and investment to resolve the mess that the last government has left us in. Any questions? Mike.
It's just on the EFS. And on the interest related to that. So just wanted sort of clarification on the process of drawing down on it and the reasons why we're putting forward in this paper, why we feel we need to draw down, how much we will be drawing down, and also just an understanding of the interest payments on it, because to the naked eye, they're obviously quite high, well over PWLB rates, and just give the clarification on why that is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. So within the summary of the report and then in the further detail, particularly in section 6.22, we do highlight certainly some of the actions. Well, before we highlight some of the actions that we're taking to immediately reduce that overspend in the kind of last few months of the year, particularly that final quarter, we also highlight some risks within the report, particularly from section 6.9 onwards. So we've now got a couple of weeks left until the year end. So we do know that we're carrying some risk compared to the Q3 report, and therefore we could see some movement, potentially some increase in that overspend. But the report does highlight the mitigations that we're taking, and particularly the one-offs that we are exploring to try and reduce that overspend by the year end. However, we have brought into the report this time that we've highlighted that there is a risk, and I'm going to say a risk and quite a high risk at this stage, that the actions that we're taking, so the one-off mitigations and the emergency response that we put in place, won't have the significant impact that we want to see in 24-25. I think it will do in 25-26, and therefore we didn't in Q2, but certainly in Q3 we have alluded to that we may need to draw down exceptional financial support for 24-25. So we were probably all sat round a similar table a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about the budget. This is in particular for 24-25. We won't know the precise amount until we close the account, so that work is underway and we'll be doing that over the next 2 months. We've taken some actions to try and minimise that, but as I say, I think a lot of the actions and the mitigations we put in place are really probably going to have an impact in 25-26. So we have the submission that we made to government was for 28 million. For up to 28 million for exceptional financial support, which we did get confirmation that they were mindful to support. That's their way of saying that they support it in principle. So we will know more. I think there's certainly some risks that we're carrying that the position could worsen, but there also is some actions that we're taking, as you can see in the report, that will bring that down. So we'll see where we settle at the end of close down. In terms of the interest rate, so we will not borrow until we have to. So we may close the year using, let's just say, a value of 10 million. We won't actually draw down that borrowing until we actually need to. So we have balances that we can use, etc. So the interest rate that we pay will depend on the interest rate of PWLB on that day that we do the borrowing. So it's currently around about 5%. It is tipping over 5% at the moment, but it is fluctuating day to day. So what we're not doing is paying premium, which we know that authorities that had exceptional financial support in previous years had to pay the PWLB rate plus 1%. That isn't the case for us. So it will be the rate that it is on the day, which is exactly the same for all our standard borrowing that we do for the capital programme. Thanks.
Thank you, Taryn. Any more questions from the Cabinet? Okay, on the screen. Councillor Emery?
Yeah, I'm here. Not sure if you can hear me okay. Just checking if you can hear me okay.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Cheers, thanks. So 3 questions. So first off, 1.6 states that the council's forecast overspend is 37.2 million. Going on to reference the possibility that this gap could be partially closed by using up to 28 million of exceptional financial support from the government. And also potential mitigations to make up the 9.2 million shortfall. Just wondering, in terms of the unapplied contingency budget and the business rates levy account surplus, so these add up just about to the required amount. Is the implication that if the council would be forced to use a section 114 notice if the overspend increases over that last quarter? So this is highlighted as a risk in section 6.1 and 6.18, or are there sufficient reserves to cover this gap if we do go over in that quarter? I realise that's quite a long question, so I'm happy to take them one at a time, or do you want me to go for all 3?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Can you do all 3, please?
Yeah, no problem at all. So 6.15, that mentions an overspend in the housing benefit budget, driven in part by local authority error in overpayments. Just wonder if you can expand on a bit on what that means. Have we been substantially overpaying to applicants, or is there a threshold by this is funded partially by the DWP and partially by the council? And the last question then, the council's debt write-offs for the past 3 years in Q3 have been 0.7, 1.7 million, and then last year 5.1. And then this year the write-off is 9.4, which seems quite high. I just wondering if we can get any information on what's caused that to shoot up so much this year.
Thank you. And I'll come in on question 1 and question 3, and I'll look at my colleague to come in on question 2. So in terms of the position, so in the same way that we have to set a balanced budget each year, we do have to also finish the year end with a balanced position as well. So the Q3 position that you're seeing is 37.2, and as you've highlighted, there's a number of risks that could worsen that forecast in the final quarter, but also a number of mitigations that we are taking. Some of them are known, and you picked up on corporate contingency and the business rate surplus that was announced as part of the settlement that links to 24-25. We are, however, and we've alluded to some of it within the report, we're doing a full balance sheet review, so looking at any other balances. What we do know is that our reserves, as you would see them in, say, a budget report or an accounts report, won't be sufficient to close that gap. So we are essentially looking at every balance that we hold on the balance sheet to see that there are any possibilities to offer some one-off solutions that we can use for 24-25. Now look, one-offs aren't a long-term solution, I have to say. They're not sustainable, but they do offer a window of opportunity for us to get to a balanced end-of-year position for 24-25, whilst we put in place those longer-term approach, and particularly the emergency response arrangements that we've now got in place. I think, as highlighted in the report, there is quite a strong risk. I don't know if we still call it a risk or an issue, that despite those mitigations, some of which we can quantify and which we have done in the report, and the other work that's underway, like I say, in terms of reviewing every possible opportunity of one-off, it may not be sufficient. And that's why we have quite openly and transparently highlighted that there is a likelihood that we will require exceptional financial support in the current year. Hopefully that addresses question 1. In terms of question 3, in terms of the write-off, so the value in the current year is higher than we have seen in previous years. It is an area that has got slightly more scrutiny than perhaps maybe it has done in previous years. We do have higher levels of age debt that we would want, and we are doing that exercise to look at essentially what is recoverable and what is a write-off. So it is higher. I think the diagrams or the information that you see within the report highlights the main areas where the debt falls, typically around parking, adult social care, but other areas as well. So we can come back with a fully written response in terms of the why, in terms of why the sudden increase, but the general principle is we've been much more targeted on the outstanding debt and really being honest and transparent about what's recoverable and what isn't. Thanks, and I'll pass over to my colleague on question 2.
Yeah, hi, Councillor. So just in respect of the local authority error question, so it relates to historical assessments that were made in terms of entitlement around benefits. It's quite a complex process in terms of assessing how much somebody is entitled to. So the DWP accept that there will be a margin of error, and they fund effectively a certain percentage of error that the organisation could make in terms of that calculation of that assessment. If we go over that threshold, we're left liable for the cost of that. We do obviously try to take back or to recover any funds that we find have been overpaid, but they can be quite historical, so it can go back a number of years. We'll carry out audits periodically to try and understand exactly what entitlement was and how assessment was made, and we'll go through that process. And obviously the organisation strives to try and reduce down the amount of error across the whole piece as much as possible, but certainly to keep it within the threshold that's considered to be an acceptable margin of error. And we're always trying to do that, always trying to look at how we improve our position in terms of making those assessments. But that's effectively what it relates to, is that quantity of assessment that was made above that margin of error.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, so if we can move to the resolutions as set out in 3.1 to 3.8 of the report, and this is contained on page 37 and 38. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Okay, item 10, which is the corporate delivery plan performance update Q3, and I'm going to introduce this. Our corporate delivery plan sets out a highly ambitious agenda for the council, putting into effect our vision for a fairer, greener Haringey. We continue to face a challenging context in which to deliver our plan, the legacy of local government being underfunded, combined with pressures on budgets due to rising costs of temporary accommodation and social care. Despite this challenging context, the overall picture shows that 92% are green or amber. Some notable achievements have been bringing leisure services in-house on 1st of October and investing in facilities. And we have made very good progress on delivering 3,000 new council homes, which are vital in tackling our housing crisis. And we are investing in our parks as well. However, it is important that we are transparent about what we have not achieved, the milestone or timescales we expected to, with an explanation of why this is the case. And this report highlights those areas as well as the positive progress made across all 8 of our themes. Are there any questions? Okay, looks like straight to you, Councillor Emery.
Thanks for that. 3 questions here on this one. Starting off with 2.8, it states there that the DEN is now being closed as an official programme, with the council developing an agreed approach to the heat networks programme to deliver the strategic objectives for the borough. Can you give some indication of what this means in practice and how this will affect current and future planning applications? I've seen some of them that have passed and that are currently being planned, where a developer is planning to link up to the DEN, and sometimes this is a way of showing like green credentials. Just wondering how that will affect that. Second question is in relation to the proposed retrofit on the Coldfall estate. 2.11 says that there's a risk of returning grant if enough competitions are not achieved by the end of September 2025. Just wondering if you can quantify this risk. And then the third question, there's a section on page 166, preparing for CQC assurance inspection with the aim of achieving outcome of good is given a green RAG rating, despite the fact that this inspection has occurred and Haringey received a verdict of requires improvement. Just wondering if you can explain that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Emery. I'm going to hand over to colleagues to answer these questions, all in different areas. So I'll start with Barry.
Yeah, thank you. So just on the question on the DEN. So our position is effectively still that we want to try and encourage decarbonisation as much as possible, and we will look to do whatever we can moving forward, whether that's working with whatever the government brings forward in terms of the development of heat zone network, of heat zones coming forward, but also looking at what we can do with developers as they come forward with new developments around looking at alternatives to tapping into a distributed energy network where there isn't one available. In terms of sites that have already been consented on, there is still ambition to extend the existing heat network that we have within the borough currently to try and tap into where it's feasible. Where it's not feasible, obviously we'll touch back with those developers and see what alternatives there are. But there is a paper being developed at the moment that's looking at exactly those points and what the consequences are moving forward. But as I say, our ambition as an organisation still very much remains to try and continue to decarbonise and prioritise the use of green energy across the borough.
Okay, in terms of the second question, am I going to bring in Jonathan or Councillor Williams on that?
Yeah, we didn't hear the question.
Sorry, Councillor Emery, can you just repeat it? The acoustics are quite bad. We know it was related to that area, but we didn't catch the specifics. So can you just repeat the question, please?
For the next set of questions, I'll put some headphones on, which should improve the mic. It was in relation to the retrofit on the Coalfall estate, 211. It says that there's a risk of returning grant if enough competitions are not achieved by the end of September 2025. Could you quantify this risk?
Jonathan Kirby, Director for Placemaking and Housing. In terms of obviously not having a contractor selected at the moment, there is obviously a slim chance of us being able to deliver that number, but we don't believe that the grant will be called back. So we think that's a minimal risk there, that we'll still be able to deliver on those schemes.
Thank you, Jonathan. Beverly?
Thank you for the question on CQC. So the green rating reflects the direction of travel. There was a very broad timescale for the preparation for CQC inspection. We started in May of last year. The report was published in October. Sorry, the inspection took place in October, and we are very confident that the direction of travel denotes a green RAG rating status, and there's an improvement board that will continue to monitor the progress in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Okay, so if we can move to the resolution, which is set out in 3.1 to 3.2 of the report on page 156. Do we all agree? Okay. Item 11, which is the extension and variation of the contracts for mental health pathway services. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. So we have a duty to deliver high quality mental health services for our borough to promote wellbeing, reduce crises and diminish health inequalities. Unfortunately, the number of people in Haringey experiencing serious mental illness is increasing. In 2023-24, it was a 1.37% increase from 1.28% in 22-23 and significantly higher than a London average of 1.1. So that means that 10.5% of our residents were suffering from depression in 2023-24, an increase of 7.7% on previously recorded. So we're seeking approval to extend our contracts for housing related support to ensure the continuity of care of those that rely on these services. Under the Mental Health Act, we are obliged to provide aftercare services that will help address complex mental health needs, reduce deterioration risk and prevent costly readmissions. The extension will also provide the necessary time to evaluate and co-design improvements to the current services, as well as harmonise with adult social care pathways. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Gatter.
Thank you. Do similar mental health pathways exist in other boroughs, and how do costs compare with alternatives like adult social care?
These are non-statutory. I don't know any comparative boroughs, but maybe Sarah does.
Hi, I can come in. Sarah Sutton, Assistant Director for Partnerships, Communities and Housing Demand. So as part of this work, we did a benchmarking activity to assess whether our costs were in line with others, and that came out that our costs were really comparative to other London boroughs.
Okay, any more questions from the Cabinet? No. Okay, Councillor Emery. No, Councillor Emery, have you? No, he has not got a question.
I do, sorry. I think it might be an issue with these headphones, probably.
Okay.
Apologies for this, apologies for the technical details. Two questions on this one. First question, there was an insufficient number of tenders received for accommodation-based lots in the 2022 tender process. That's under section 1.4. And it's noted in section 5.5 that there will be a significant risk of this occurring again if we re-tendered now. What work will be going on in the year afforded by these contract extensions to ensure that we're not left with no bidders in 2026? And then the second question, given the increase in need in the borough, was thought given to either extending the scope of these contracts, or if that isn't possible, tendering extra contracts.
Sorry, are you coming on it?
Yeah, I'll come in. And we also have a colleague, Zara May, online who can provide further detail. The purpose of, or our plans are to do a full review over the next period in relation to these contracts and to consider what opportunities there may be to look at different models of delivery. So there'll be a comprehensive review between now and any recommissioning activity, which will cover both of those points, and we will consider what is required in relation to need, demand, and also the kind of market and procurement routes. Zara, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, so we've already started engaging with the market, so our current providers, and looking at what other local authorities are currently delivering. So the reason why we wanted the 3-year extension is to provide that stability and start doing the work now to prepare the market that we are going to go out for tender in the next 3 years. So the work has already started progressing. So just to minimise the risk of potentially not getting the necessary bids coming in.
Okay, thank you, Zara. Okay, if there's no more questions, we will move to the resolution after considering the exempt information at item 20. Item 12, which is the local flood risk management strategy and 5-year delivery plan. Councillor Chamwani.
Thank you, Leader. In 2021, Haringey saw some of the worst flooding in a generation caused by heavy rainfall. As part of our local duty, we conducted 3 Section 19 flooding investigations. As some of you know, whilst we don't have beaches or seafronts in Haringey, we do have a lot of water running through the borough, with the River Lee, River Moselle, the New River and Moselle Brook. Most of these waterways are underground, culverted over 100 years ago. As you can see in 7.10 of the report, the Moselle is caving in parts of Tottenham High Road. And next week we will start the process of making that road safe. We know what the problems are from the Section 19 report, and we know what we need to do to defend our borough from flooding. And today I hope we approve the £4.8 million to carry out this plan over the next 5 years. Leader, I just want to take the cheeky opportunity to thank Pankit. For those of you who have met him, he's an absolute star when it comes down to knowing everything about flooding for every millimetre of the borough. And obviously Tom Henry, both Peters and Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Chamwani. Are there any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Hurtado.
Thank you, Councillor. I wasn't quite sure whether you were potentially proposing the creation of a beach to add to Haringey's tourist pull from Alexandra Palace and the Markfield Beam House as well, and Spurs. Anyway, the question is actually directly on the Suds, which is a really successful, I think possibly the most sort of fastest growing rainwater garden Suds scheme in London. The question I have is, what is the metrics that we use for success, for measuring the success of flood projects, and is that easily done? And following from that, I have another one which was on the maintenance and how we manage maintenance. Is there a maintenance plan? And is there a maintenance plan really?
Thank you, Councillor Carter. We were planning a beach near Ali Pali, but one of the Cabinet members wanted to make a cycle lane towards that direction, so we abandoned the idea pretty quickly. I'm not going to confirm or deny that we have the most Suds in London, but I might go with it though, because it's fastest growing. I might go with that. You know, we're going to hit election period soon, so I might run with that. I think one of the reasons that we do have, and we are working towards getting loads of SUDs, is because of the fact that we do have a lot of waterways connected to our borough, under our borough and around our borough. And also because of our topography, we do have the Muswell Hill that then comes down and pours down rainwater. That's not to say that other boroughs who don't have as much are not as good as us. It just probably is that they don't need it because of those elements. In terms of successful metrics, I could sit here and say it's been really successful because we haven't had X amount of complaints about flooding. And that's true. But we also haven't experienced the rainfall that we experienced in 2021. So there is variables, and yes, we can say that we haven't had these flooding experiences, but we also haven't had the rainfall that we experienced. That said, it is without a doubt, whilst I can't say so empirically, that we have had rainfall, maybe not as severe, but we have not had the reports and the complaints. However, the reason we still need money and the reason that we still need to do this is that there are really localised parts of the borough that still do have flooding, and therefore the success that we might have had at the bottom of Priory Road needs to be spread in other boroughs like Hampden Road and Haringey Ward, for example, who even a fraction of that rain, they're flooding. Tampere Lane is another example, a fraction of that rain that we had in 21, and they're flooding. So that's why we need that. In terms of the maintenance plan, absolutely right. Some of these SUD schemes were put in, a while ago, and they've been put in by different teams, whether it be a parks team, whether it be a regen team, etc. So one of the things we're doing at the moment through reconfiguring the waste contract that is going to be, the specs being designed as we speak, is to place this within that, and any new SUD schemes that are being put in come with a 2-year maintenance to ensure that that is taken care of and then picked up through the waste scheme. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you. Any more questions from the Cabinet? No. Okay, Councillor Emery.
3 questions in this section. I know you mentioned of Priory Road. I still keep a clean eye on that one, and hopefully we can make sure that one doesn't pop up again. First question, the RMS mentions that the Section 19 reports prepared in 2021 include recommendations which include increasing gully clearance frequency in high-risk areas, retrofitting SUDs, and introducing temporary road closures in the event of a future flood event. And then it goes on to say in a later part, the council has subsequently reviewed and increased the frequency of gully clearing as a result of recommendations. Does this mean that the other 2 things are not being considered? That seems to be the implication here. I just would like some clarification on that. Second question, a fairly short one. There's no groundwater vulnerability data for areas in the southwest and central Haringey. Just wondered if is there any plans to rectify these blind spots? And then the third question, section 2.5 mentions the council will continue lobbying Thames Water to upgrade their assets, but given that the company's financial position, Thames Water that is, this looks unlikely in the near term. Are there any particular areas of the borough where the decaying infrastructure is particularly concerning? If so, will those be prioritised and pushed for Thames Water?
Thank you, Scott. Unfortunately, your mic went a bit funny in the beginning, but I think you gave the team a compliment about Priory Road and Park Road, which is a shame, but I hope other people at home heard it because it was nice to hear. So just a couple of things, and some of them seem to be clarity. What we are saying in the report is that after 2021, we basically cleaned all of the gullies, and we also realised that the reason it wasn't done previously is because there were parked cars there. So that was to also make sure that the cars were suspended and will come forward. Do you want me to wait for him to come back? Sorry, I thought he was back. I felt like, oh, new headphones. Yeah, I just hit 3 years of marriage, so I'm sort of used to it now, speaking to my husband and someone just walks off, but here we are. So what it's saying is that we're going to carry on maintaining, cleaning the gullies, and I think we weren't prescriptive, but we're going to carry on also suspending the bays. So I'm sorry if that came across that we're not going to do the bay suspension anymore, but of course we are, because otherwise it's a waste of time. We're going to have to keep going round. I think the rainfall data, and we can get that information to you. I think the rainfall data that we collected was really in the areas where we knew we had waterways and flood risks. But I can't really see because I need to obviously go Specsavers, but if Pankit's online, he can pick that up. In terms of is it Mark? Okay. In terms of Thames Water, we're lobbying them on various fronts. So one of the reasons we're lobbying them is their decay in Victorian system, and a good example of that is Park Road in Crouch End Ward. I mean, how many times is that going to happen, right? The other thing that we're kind of really pushing them on is all of their misconnections. And one of the things we've seen on Tottenham High Road, it hasn't contributed to the caving in of the culvert, but it isn't helpful. So there's loads of different things that are happening that we're really pushing Thames Water on. I would say there's some success there because Thames Water seems to be visiting our borough quite a lot, because we know that because we keep having to put temporary traffic lights everywhere so they can dig up. But, so there's pros and cons to it, but we are kind of really pushing them to do a permanent job and really look at what some of the issues are. If Mark can come in about the rainfall, that would be really great.
Just to say, it's groundwater, not rainfall.
Yeah, but I didn't quite catch the question on groundwater, Councillor Emma. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, and again, apologies for the headphones. Hopefully these ones are better. Why is there no groundwater vulnerability data for areas in southwest and central Haringey, and are there plans to rectify these blind spots?
I think it's because there's no vulnerability over there in relation to groundwater because of the levels, because the west of the borough and the south of the borough are higher than the east. So the groundwater issues are flagged up in the local flood risk management strategy anyway. So there's basically no issue to address there in terms of groundwater, so we don't need to cover it off.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so if we can move to the resolution as set out in 3.1 of the report, page 230 to 231 of the agenda, we all agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Item 13, which is Tottenham Green Leisure Centre. This is phase 2 of the year 1 works. Councillor Arkell.
Thank you. I'm seeking Cabinet approval to award a contract for the sum of £687,418.82, plus a 10% contingency for phase 2 refurbishment of Tottenham Green Leisure Centre. Building condition surveys undertaken at the Leisure Centre have identified urgent works following the insourcing of the site on the 1st of October 2024, which is exactly 169 days ago. These works include essential repairs to the building to prolong its economic life and to redecorate, upgrade the changing facilities, the public access corridors and staff areas to ensure visible improvements and compliance with the Equality Act of 2010. These are the second round of improvements which will enable greater use of Tottenham Green by a wider group of residents and support them to pursue and maintain a healthy and fulfilling life with dignity by staying active and connected with their community.
Thank you, Councillor Arkell. Are there any questions on this item from the Cabinet? Cheer from Councillor Hakata. Councillor Emery.
Thankfully, these 3 questions are very short, so hopefully there won't be any mic problems with this one. Why are works being funded through the general fund rather than the capital account? First and foremost. The second question is the fact that the centre is in a state of disrepair the fault of the council or a fault of the previous contractor Fusion? And the third question, when will the forward maintenance plan be put in?
So I didn't hear the last question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, I can. When will the forward maintenance plan be put in place?
So I'm going to start with the second question. So it is absolutely not the fault of Haringey Council. The buildings, when they were handed back to us, were in a very poor state. But we have fully committed to upgrading them and to making them as good as we possibly can to ensure that residents can use them and have that active lifestyle if they wish to pursue it. By bringing them back in-house, it also enables us to join up with activities in parks and other green spaces so residents can have that full holistic, active and wellbeing approach and offer that other residents in other boroughs do. I'm going to hand over to Andrew to answer the other two questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, Andrew Meek, Assistant Director for Capital Projects and Property. I think your first question was, why is it being funded through the general fund? Is that right? It's being funded through the general fund because the property is held by the general fund, and so that's where we would fund those works from. It's as straightforward as that. And then I think your second question was, when will we produce a forward maintenance plan for the building? We're working on that now. I mean, it's an iterative process, and we've got the first stages of that, and this project forms part of that plan, and picking up on the information that we've had through our condition surveys, we'll develop the future stages of that plan. So that will be reflected in further reports that will come forward in due course.
Thank you, Andrew. If I can move to item 14, which is the Haringey Local Development Scheme. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. So in the local development scheme, we're setting out our commitment to submit the draft of our local plan by summer 2026 and to adopt the final version by February 2027. So the local plan sets out a framework for placemaking and managing new developments in the borough, making it a key component for the delivery of our borough vision and the Haringey deal. Since our existing local plan was adopted in 2017, we've seen a number of significant changes, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the adoption of a new London plan, and our declaration of a climate emergency. And we've revised the strategic aspirations for Haringey. We need a local plan that answers these new challenges and delivers on our vision of what we want for our borough by 2035. The local development scheme builds on our first set of consultations with residents in 2021, with a second set in July-September 2025. It's important that we demonstrate to residents our intent to deliver the new local plan and ensure we hear everyone's voice, including the voices of those that are too often overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Actually only asking this so I can ask Bryce a question, because I haven't asked him a question for a long time. I guess one of the key aspects of this is the engagement and how we can ensure that as many people and as many diverse voices are involved in this. I mean, it's probably becoming more interesting land use because of climate and because of these aspects around the environment. So I just wondered, are you planning, or have you got into that mode where you're planning how you're going to manage the consultation and engagement?
Before Bryce comes in, because I know he won't show off, he did win an award for the first set of engagement. So.
Thank you. So, yeah, it's really important that we speak to as many people as possible. So we accept that challenge. We're at the early stage at the minute of preparing a communications and engagement plan. When we bring the draft local plan to Cabinet in the summer, it will be accompanied by a very detailed comms and engagement plan, and we welcome your feedback on that in due course.
Any more questions from the Cabinet? No. Okay, Councillor Emery.
Two questions on this one. First and foremost, the original plan envisioned in the first step issues and options engagement process, which leading into the consultation of the draft plan after a few months. On the new timetable, that gap is over 4 years. I was just wondering, do you consider that the results of the issues and options consultation is still going to be relevant and up to date, given that the consultation period ended back in February 2021? And then the second question, the document outlines some of the reasons, for example, filling of vacancies. The council feels it's in a better position to meet the timetable it set itself in the time versus back in 2020. However, given the council's failure to come close to meeting the original timetable, what mechanisms are in place to make sure that this timetable doesn't slip if there is a staff turnover down the line, for instance?
Thanks. So, yeah, the consultation and engagement is sort of an ongoing process. So when the second time around, once the draft goes out to consultation, then we can probably see if there's a different views being expressed. So until we've done that, we won't know. And on the timeline, there was a slippage, I think, really just because of lack of resource in the department, which has now been addressed. But I don't know, Bryce, if you'd like to speak, or Jonathan, more on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Henry. So on the first point, so issues and options conversation was some time ago, so we do recognise that whilst we haven't done a formal consultation over that period, we have still had a lot of contact with a variety of stakeholders, so it's been an ongoing dialogue. In addition, as you'll be aware, the council has done a lot of other engagements over that time period in relation to climate change action plan, walking and cycling action plan, etc. So we're working with colleagues across the council to understand what that feedback was and to check that that is consistent with the original feedback we had. On the second point, around delays. So yes, there have been some delays, unfortunately. Principally, they've been down to resources within the planning policy team. This was an issue raised via the planning service peer challenge in response to the recommendations from that independent report. We've now got a fully resourced planning policy team in place as of around 6 months ago. So we're ready and resourced to move forward now. In addition, in the current budget context, we've tried to do as much work in-house as possible in order to save the council money that would otherwise be spent externally. So doing that work in-house means that there have been some delays in that regard.
Thank you, Bryce. Okay, before we move to resolution, there's been a slight, we need to make a slight amendment. So recommendation 3.1 is required to be amended to reflect the calling period of 5 clear working days following the decision. Therefore, I propose that we amend the recommendation to approve the revised local development scheme, Appendix A, for publication after the conclusion of the calling period following the decision as noted and endorsed by the Strategic Planning Committee. Does it run into it? Okay. So following this amendment, do we agree the resolutions as set out in 3.1 of the report? And this is on page 316. Do we all agree? Agreed. Thank you. Item 15, which is the contractor selection for new council homes on Lansdowne Road sites, N17. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. So I'm pleased and delighted to recommend that the Cabinet approves the proposals to build 37 brand new energy efficient council homes, providing much needed high quality and affordable housing for local people, including families and those with disabilities. Now, as we know, housing is an absolute top priority for Haringey, and that's why we've committed to delivering 3,000 new high-quality council homes for local residents by 2031. I mean, this is the biggest council house building effort in generations, and the need for new affordable homes is urgent and just increasing. The wait time for residents on the housing register for 2 or 3 bedroom houses is between 4 and 13 years. So I can't say strongly enough how delighted I am that this on Lansdowne Road development is going to enable us to provide much needed stable homes to those living in temporary or overcrowded or in other ways unsuitable accommodation. And out of these 37 properties, 27 will be 2 bedroom, with 3 of those being fully adaptable for residents with disabilities, and 3 will be 3 bedroom homes. In addition to housing, the development will feature play facilities and additional trees, planting and seating areas for old and new residents alike to enjoy. Additional cycle storage and enhanced refuse and recycling facilities will also address concerns of existing residents. And as a landlord, Haringey Council has the responsibility to ensure energy bills are fair and affordable for our tenants, and that our homes allow us to reach our net zero carbon aims. The environmental benefits of the proposed homes, including cost-saving energy efficiency measures, meet the Mayor of London's high housing design standards and our own exacting sustainability targets. So I hope you'll approve this contract.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Heckath.
I love the fact that we're building like not just council homes, but real quality, sustainable council homes. That's amazing. So, yeah, exactly. So my question is, so we've got the fastest growing school streets programme in the country. We've got potentially the most expensive SUDS programme in the capital. Is this the most ambitious council house building programme in London? Confirm or deny?
Yes. I mean, having been at a council housing summit in Sheffield last week, where local authorities up and down the country met to speak of the challenge faced by local authorities in building social homes, it became very clear that we seem to have managed to overcome some hurdles that most other local authorities don't seem to have managed to do. So to that, we're very grateful to the team and to the Mayor of London for putting his faith in us to actually deliver. And I think we can see that that is what we're actually doing.
Councillor Over.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of mitigations, what mitigations are in place? Should there be any difficulties in the contractor meeting its legal obligations or having any financial troubles in future?
Well, we have a crack team that, procure properly and we do our best. I don't think, I'll let them come in, but I don't think you can ever be absolutely 100% sure on any of these, but all you can do is all your procurement properly. And make sure that you get the right people bidding. But I'll let the guys come in.
Like Councillor Williams said, you can never fully mitigate against contractor failure. But what we do is we'll make sure we have a fixed price contract so that, should costs rise, we're protected against that cost rise. We pay as the works go on. So we're only ever paying for works that have been carried out. And we do keep retentions as well. So generally, depending on the scheme, there are different levels of retention according to risk. But so those three things do help mitigate our risk. We also tend, in most contracts, we'll have either a performance bond, which if the contractor goes insolvent, gives us 10% of the contract value back, or have a parent company guarantee, where that's more advantageous to us. So we have a range of ways in which we protect ourselves. Nothing is 100%. We have been exposed to some contractor insolvencies, but we have managed to mitigate most of the fallout from that by the way that we procure, the way that we pay, and the protections that we have in place.
Thank you, Robbie. Any more questions from the Cabinet? Okay, Councillor Emery.
Thanks for that. 3 questions on this. The scheme was originally approved for inclusion in the housing delivery programme 6 years ago. I think plan permission was gained for most of the scheme around 3 years ago. Just wondering why the lead-in for this scheme has been taking so long. And then question 2, why do you think only 3 of the 18 suppliers invited to put tender in for bids? And then lastly, what level of confidence do you have that the work will start place before the planning permission lapses in a couple of weeks' time?
I couldn't actually get question number 2. I assume the sort of predates me 6 years ago, so let's let the team come in on that, but I think that's just because of
want me to repeat question 2 while we wait?
Oh, I've got it. Thanks. And Robbie's going to come in on the more.
Yeah, so on the first question on why did it take so long, we were in a position where we've had some viability challenges with the scheme, and so we've had to do some value engineering. We've also now been able to take advantage of the fact that the contractor market's in a slightly better place in terms of costs. We've been able to squeeze a bit more grant out of the GLA, and that's just got these schemes over the line. And so I guess that's the main reason why it's difficult. It's a bit fiddly. It's essentially 4 different sites with 4 different planning permissions, which are over other sides of the road, which make it slightly more difficult to construct than other schemes, which is why it's always been a bit of a challenging one to take forwards. But we're really, really pleased to now get to a place where we do have a viable scheme and we can deliver much needed homes for Haringey households here. The second question was just, that was about the selection from 18 to 3. That was on the basis of responses to a questionnaire. It's fairly standard for our procurement processes and in line with the CSOs. And then the last question was around making sure that work started. Yes, so we have outside of the contract, we have another arrangement for ensuring that the works to trigger the planning permission will happen imminently. So that those works will happen outside of this contract. We don't need the contract to mobilise for that to happen.
Thank you very much. Hang on. So we will return to the resolutions on this after considering exempt information at item 21. So if I can move to item 16, which is minutes of other bodies, can we please note the minutes of cabinet member sign-ins from pages 647 to 670? Can we note these, please? Thank you. Item 17, significant and delegated actions. Can we please note the decisions taken by directors on pages 389 to 392? Can we please note these?
Sorry. Can we just double check the cabinet member sign-ins, because I think one of these needs to be looked at. I think on the 5th I done the parking and I done the enforcement powers. I didn't. Sorry, it's just.
Okay, we're just going to check that. Was we actually, sorry, did we do 17? Yes, we did. So item 18, new items of urgent business. There are none. Before I move to exclusion of the press and public, just to say that rather sadly tonight is the last cabinet that Beverly Tarker, our Director of Adults Health and Communities, will be out. So Beverly, I'd like it on record, and I'm sure everyone will join me in that, in saying a big thank you to you. You've been with us for 30 years, and I know we'll get to say a proper goodbye to you tomorrow, and I'll try not to be emotional, I promise. But thank you for everything that you've done. It's been very tough for adults of the past 10, 15 years, and you've handled it marvellously. So thank you from me, and thank you on behalf of the whole cabinet. You didn't think you were going to get away with that. All right. Now, if I can move to exclusion of the press and public. So items 20, 21, 22 allows for consideration of exempt information in relation to item 11, 13 and 15. So can I move that the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting to consider this exempt information as defined under paragraphs 3 and 5, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do we all agree? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to formally close the public section of the meeting.